All right, let's get into it. You know, when you look at a syllabus, it can just feel like a long list of old books, right? Well, today we're going to flip that on its head. We are firing up a literary time machine to turn that list into an absolutely incredible journey through centuries of stories and ideas.
So, think of this as an active mission. You're not just a passenger here. This is an expedition into the heart of what we call the English literary canon. Ready to see what we find?
Okay, here's the game plan. It's simple, but it's epic. We're going to cover about 600 years of history. We'll meet the absolute giants, the architects of the written word. And most importantly, we'll see how their stories, their masterpieces, are still shaping our world right now. It's going to be a wild ride. No time to waste. Let's buckle up, because our first stop takes us way back. We're talking about a time of explosive creativity, of intellectual rebirth. We're heading straight for the Renaissance. This is where so much of it begins to take shape. I mean, this is the foundational period where a handful of brilliant minds basically invented modern English literature as we know it today. And you can just see the innovation unfolding on this timeline. First, you get Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, which just blew the doors open on putting complex human psychology right on the stage. Then, of course, Shakespeare comes along and perfects English tragedy with Hamlet. A few decades later, John Milton completely redefines the epic poem with Paradise Lost, and it all kind of culminates in the razor-sharp satire of Alexander Pope. Each one of these is a titan who set the rules for centuries. Seriously, these writers were laying down the very tracks for everything that would come next. You had Marlowe and Shakespeare, the masters of drama. Milton gave us the definitive English epic. And then you have guys like John Donne twisting logic and passion into this thing called metaphysical poetry, using these wild, surprising metaphors to explore really complex ideas about love and faith. These are the building blocks right here. Okay, time machine engaged. Let's jump forward to an age of massive change, both politically and intellectually. The whole focus is about to shift big time, moving from the head to the heart. And wow, you can really see that pivot right here. We're moving away from the Enlightenment's age of reason, all about logic, order, and society, and diving headfirst into the Romantic era. Suddenly, it's all about raw emotion, individual imagination, and the awesome power of nature. It was a complete revolution in how people thought and felt. And who could capture that new spirit better than John Keats? This one line from his famous ode basically becomes the motto for the entire movement. It's not about cold, hard logic anymore. It's about finding a deeper truth in beauty and in feeling. This is the world of poets like Wordsworth and Coleridge, too. But, poetry wasn't the only game in town. As we roll into the 19th century, this powerful new way of telling stories starts to just take over the literary landscape. Why? Well, you've got a growing middle class that can read, and they were hungry for stories about their own world. And this gave us absolute giants. You've got Jane Austen, whose sharp social commentary in Pride and Prejudice feels like it could have been written yesterday. And then there's Charles Dickens, who used the novel as a weapon for social change, exposing the gritty reality of the Industrial Revolution in books like Hard Times. Along with George Eliot and Thomas Hardy, these authors weren't just telling stories. They were holding up a giant mirror to their entire age. Let's jump forward again. The world is about to get a lot more complicated. The turn of the 20th century brings chaos, and literature responds with a radical, breathtaking break from the past. Welcome to modernism. Think about it. The world had become faster, more fragmented, kind of terrifying. You had 2 world wars, cars, planes, and brand new ideas about the human mind from people like Freud. The old, straightforward way of telling a story, it just didn't feel real anymore. So art had to change. So in fiction, writers like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf basically reinvented the novel. They took us right inside the minds of their characters, using this technique called stream of consciousness to show thoughts as they actually happen, messy, chaotic, and unfiltered. In poetry, T.S. Eliot captured that broken feeling perfectly in The Wasteland. And in drama, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot started asking if there was any meaning at all. They didn't just bend the rules, they completely shattered them to reflect a fractured world. All right, for the final leg of our journey, we're going to watch the map of English literature explode across the entire globe. The old center can't hold anymore, and powerful new voices start to emerge from all over. And you can really see it here. The literary canon, which was once dominated by a handful of writers from England, just blows up. It now includes these distinct, powerful traditions from America, from India, and from what we call new literatures.
places like Africa, the Caribbean, and beyond.
Over in the US, America was forging its own literary identity. It was all about democracy, individualism, that whole frontier spirit. You can feel it in the sprawling poetry of Walt Whitman, see it in the intense family dramas of Arthur Miller, and read it in the lean, powerful sentences of Ernest Hemingway. Meanwhile, from the Indian subcontinent came this just stunningly vibrant body of work. You have the spiritual poetry of Rabindranath Tagore, the intensely personal poems of Kamala Das, the epic magic of Salman Rushdie, and the myth-infused plays of Girish Karnad. It's an incredible showcase of Indian writing in English. And the conversation just kept getting bigger. In Nigeria, Chinua Achebe's masterpiece Things Fall Apart gave a voice to a culture that had been silenced by colonialism. Wole Soyinka brought a Nobel Prize to African drama. From the Caribbean, you have poets like Derek Walcott exploring these complex histories. And from Canada, writers like Margaret Atwood gave us these sharp, unforgettable visions of our world. And this brings us to a really crucial point. Literature is a conversation that echoes across centuries. Virginia Woolf's deep dives into consciousness, you can hear an echo of that in the work of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. T.S. Eliot's modernism influenced poets like Seamus Heaney, and Jean Rhys literally wrote back to Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre with her novel Wide Sargasso Sea. See, nothing exists in a vacuum. It's all connected. So as we power down our time machine, let's just take a breath. It's clear that this syllabus, this literary canon, is so much more than just a required reading list. What it really is a dynamic, evolving, sometimes messy conversation about what it means to be human. It's a conversation that's been unfolding for 600 years across continents and over countless pages. And the best part? That conversation is still going on right now, which leaves us with one last, pretty exciting question to think about. Whose voices and whose stories are going to shape the century to come? The next chapter is still being written.